Hello and welcome to today's session. This is how to integrate virtual manipulatives into your lessons. My name is Kim Snowball from NKCES, and I will be your facilitator through this online session. It is really just an hour, but it's an hour packed full of resources. And so, which reminds me, I need to make sure that you have, in fact, the training guide at your disposal because the hyperlinks that are included in that will be valuable for you in the future. So I'm going to take myself off the screen and we're going to dive into the next part. So as we begin our journey, we're going to be starting in our vehicle here with a bank of virtual manipulatives. So many that it's going to be a little overwhelming at first. And then we're going to travel down this road into sorting and selecting which ones so that we don't end up with choice paralysis. As we continue our journey, it might be a little uphill journey because this might be new learning for us about how to make our own virtual manipulatives if we want to do some drop and drag activities and some sorting. It might be, sorting shapes. Then as we go through, we're going to spring forward and let you have a bank of math books that are online library, our virtual library. So that is our journey for today. Let's begin. As you begin to think about what you have in front of you, you were given in the training guide that came with the when you access the NKCES online webpage. And this training guide is a wealth of resources for you to keep for now and the future. So make sure you secure that in a safe place on your Google Drive or on your computer because there are a lot of hyperlinks that'll take you directly to resources. The other piece that you should have in front of you is the guided notes so you can capture your thinking and learning as you go through. The link for that is right here. It's the first link on the left-hand side in step 1 of the training guide. Notice that in step 1 also there are 3 video links, and those video links, this one is the number 1, and then you will have 2 additional video links to watch that are very short snippets, but you'll want to practice, practice, practice. Step 2 is going to be after you complete all 3 videos, you're going to access your certificate by clicking the hyperlink in step 2, which will ask you some questions. Please keep in mind that you must be careful when you're entering your email information because that is where your certificate will be sent. If you have any type of too many O's in school, it will not get to you and you'll need to retake the assessment again. Again, step 3, a lot of resources, a lot of resources. When you get to step 3, you're going to want to pay close attention to the very first hyperlink where it says elementary virtual manipulatives and math library shareable slides. There are slides in there, and these slides, it will look like this. It is a slide deck, and the first slide is the virtual library of math manipulatives. The second one is going to be your virtual library of math books and posters. This one is just an additional slide that was created, and I thought if you were wanting to sort students or hyperlink them in to different rooms or different manipulatives in your baskets, that it's there as well. And then the last slide is where all of the virtual slide deck or all of the slide decks from the virtual live session that we've already had. And we work through many of these activities. So you have access to that slide deck as well. The very first activity that we're going to talk about is the geometry activity. So we're going to look and dive into virtual geometry. So as you notice that I have the directions for this particular activity already secured on the slide, I also have included a copy of I went ahead and just copied it from the virtual library, the icon that is the GeoBoard. I have a tutorial in case students, or if we have parents working with their student, that there is a how to utilize this particular manipulative. And then I did include a little timer if I wanted to keep the students at a set time for specific activities. All of this is included on the main page. But as students are working through, I'm also creating a similar environment, a working environment, where the virtual manipulative is there on each one of the slides. And that so even if I go to this slide, I've just got it set to the side. Each one of the virtual manipulatives are in fact on the slides, so that as they go and toggle back and forth for slides, they have the option to click directly on that and not have to go searching. What I have created also for you is a stationary background. And if you look at the slide deck, I'm going to go ahead and go down. If I go down to the next slide, slide 7, everything below slide 7 are the editable copies. When you get to the second and the third video, you will be able to understand a little bit more about how we created an environment for students to move and drop and drag their pictures on here. For this one, if I go to the GeoBoard and I am asked to, I will create a polygon based on the information that was given. I can drop and drag these rubber bands. And if I grab from the center by using my mouse, I have the ability to stretch and move it and make it into multiple shapes and adhering the rubber band to the pegs. I can also grab other colors too and create a complex shape. Well, that was supposed to go up here, but a complex shape that we might ask students to identify. This would be a convex polygon. This is also a convex polygon or a rectangle, so we can include a lot of different vocabulary. In order to capture this and put this in there, all I did was I grabbed my snipping tool and I just highlighted the area. If it doesn't highlight all, I just re-snip it. And then now that I have it there, I can go back to my geometry board and I can, in fact, paste it directly on there. If I am in student 16, then I'm going to just shrink that down and paste it over there. And the engagement factor is increased. Students that are operating on this particular GeoBoard, they may decide that they can't view 16 quite. So then the students, since it's an editable document, they'll be able to enlarge it. You'll be able to actually right click on it and add comments to the side. So if I wanted to ask a question or ask someone to revisit, give feedback, students give feedback, I have the ability to do that by a simple right click and add the comments. Again, taking and having students color or the teacher color code the actual slides to have them be assigned would also be highly recommended. Okay, so that's the GeoBoard activity. Let's take a look now at why are we doing this in the first place. It's because of this instructional sequence CSA. concrete, semi-concrete, abstract. And sometimes people think that they must go through the concrete, then the semi-concrete, and then the abstract. Many students might even just begin at the semi-concrete, but anytime there's new learning, we want students to have the ability to learn about the concept. So this instructional sequence enables students to develop a conceptual understanding prior to learning procedures. So the use of CSA instruction enables students to make connections and provide a graduated framework for learning. And during each phase of this instruction, we need to, as teachers, explicitly link the concrete and the pictorial representations with the symbolic and the abstract. It's not always intuitive. We also need to be aware that this is a very fluid type of environment. You might find that once students have engaged in the new learning, they need to then jump back. Maybe they've gone already and they felt competent enough to work in the abstract mode. All of a sudden, the problem is a little more challenging, so they go back to semi-concrete. Our job as teachers is never to say to them, oh, no, you're past picture drawings. That should always be an option. Concrete manipulatives, when we're learning, always an option. And so this is that learning using multiple representations to help the students understand the concepts and the procedures of mathematics. If you would like additional information, I highly recommend you going to that last page on that in that Google slide deck. The last link will have a video clip from Dr. Sarah Powell with the National Center for Intensive Interventions. Talks about why this is so important, especially in a DBI process or progress monitoring. It's very, very, very powerful instruction. We can do all of this, give students all the manipulatives in the world, but if we don't understand that there are some misuses, then we make the mistake of undermining the whole process. So we need to take a moment to recognize that sometimes manipulatives are misused. Just because the students have access to them during the lesson doesn't mean that the relationship between the manipulatives and the mathematics is made by the students. I recall when I was reading the book Teaching Student-Centered Mathematics that these relationships must be created by the students in their own minds and imposed on the manipulatives or models used to represent the concept. That was powerful, and I thought, wow, that's so true. We as teachers impose it, but until the students impose it in their own mind, then the relationship has not been made. The second misconception is that when we create a rigid framework to use manipulatives only as a teacher uses them, then we are missing the point. All we've done is replace one rote procedure with another. And finally, the most common misuse of manipulatives is to tell the students which manipulatives to use. Exposing them to multiple uses of manipulatives in different ways is different than dictating which one they must use in order for them to make sense. It definitely, in the end, it needs to be the student's choice. And that is where, when we talk about the 8 standards for mathematical practices, number 5, where the students use the tools appropriately, that they can choose which one. Ultimately, whenever we're talking manipulatives, it's the students need to choose their own representations, and so that they can reason through the problem. As we think about how students in the past have used physical manipulatives, because it provides this knowledge transfer, virtual manipulatives are important as well, because their interactive on-screen representation can sometimes be a little more flexible than the actual concrete manipulatives. If students don't have access to manipulatives at home, we have this other option. And finally, one one very, very big bonus of having virtual manipulatives is that they're definitely easier to manage. So here's what our virtual manipulatives library looks like. If we are using virtual manipulatives, we need to let students play with them before the math comes into play. And we need to not have so much choice that this gets overwhelming. This original slide was modified from Lily Chavez, and I remember thinking to myself, how incredible to be able to organize a virtual manipulative shelf. But I wanted to scale it down so I didn't have choice paralysis. And so sometimes I might have a shelf that looks like this. There are things on the shelf that I may never use at my specific grade level, and that's why it's important to make it your own. When you are creating this environment, you might need some additional learning yourself. And so there is a lot of information out there about how to use base 10 blocks or Cuisenaires or pattern or Rec and Rex or any one of the manipulatives. So take the time, and this is another interactive slide deck where you can go in, click on, and explore the different uses of the manipulatives. We also have the internet that has quite a few videos already out there by teachers. And so we have an opportunity to learn a little easier. It still can be a little bit crazy. And so as we start thinking about which one should I use, bring the tool and compare the constraints of them. It's important that we think through what are the limitations, what are the bonuses for each particular manipulative. Some manipulatives have the ability to change languages, some have grid options. So it's about being critical consumers. One of the other activities that we have in the slide deck is the opportunity for, just like the geoboards, to present a problem with the student to the students and then have them try to solve it. You would be interesting. It is interesting always to see which manipulatives they use, and we want to again provide them with that choice. Another way to help see their thinking is to leave blank slides in our presentations so that students can then, as they work through the virtual manipulatives, take a snipping picture of it and share it with the class. It's not about proceduralizing it. It's not about giving them shortcuts in mathematics, but that productive struggle is where the learning takes place. I did include the link to the KV sisters because I have to say that in this chicken and rabbit problem, the way they solved it through a kid's conceptual understanding of what's going on in the problem is quite remarkable, and I thought you would enjoy it as well. If you are going to provide opportunities for students, you might want to create the virtual manipulative shelves where they can go back to the home room. So in this particular activity in slide deck, it's called the rabbit and chicken problem. It's in Google Slides room. It's where students have the opportunity to be placed in groups or placed in rooms. And they can click directly on the baskets. You can make hyperlinks that go directly to specific slides. And then in doing so, then the students, 3 students might be placed in room 2. What I want to show you is that we've created an environment, like I said, where the background is stationary, but the manipulatives have been copied and pasted directly right in each one of the slides. And so that students don't have to toggle back and forth. The other bonus is that we can create multiple rooms and have students toggle back and forth and check each other's work as these slide decks are available for students to jump back and forth. So you might be thinking, how do I create some of these locked objects or locked images? That's where you're going to go to video 2. It's on that training guide. How to lock objects in Google Slides, so that if I have a background and a sort like a triangle sort here, that I could in fact take this and possibly drag it and then drop it into the appropriate slide. I might want to move this, but I want to keep the directions stationary where they can't be moved. But to find out more information about how to do this, that's where you're going to go to that video. And then the second or the third video is actually creating manipulatives in Google Slides. So if you are wanting to make duplicates of a specific manipulative, you might need to just highlight, snip the picture, and then create duplicates of it. But then you want to stack them all nice and neat so that you can have students have multiple representations on the screen. So if I was doing this, this is so that I could, in fact, align it in the middle, align it in the center, and then I have this stack of manipulatives that after that I can have students grab and move along the page instead of having to duplicate it each time. So that how to make your own manipulatives is that third video. And lastly, we're just going to just visit the virtual library where you have posters to create your online virtual classroom. You also have a lot of books here that are hyperlinked directly to an online read aloud. But more importantly, it's an opportunity for you to create your own virtual library. So you might be deleting some of these and saying, well, I have certain books that I have in my classroom that I want, and I would like to videotape myself reading the books. You can put them in here as well. And that is simply by taking a snippet of the cover. When you create your video, then just hyperlinking it to the actual image and then placing it on the background. The other thing you can do is you can grab any one of these, make a copy of it, and then you could paste it onto a different slide. And if you pasted it onto a different slide, you could then enlarge it to create your room. The same thing with the books. You can copy it and paste it into any of your lessons so that you have the books available directly on your slides. Whew, a lot of information to share and for you to make your own. If you have any other questions, you can email me. My information is on the bottom of that particular training guide. But don't forget, before you leave, you need to make sure that you go to the bit.ly, that link, and complete the online assessment, and then your certificate will be mailed to you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this session. It's been a pleasure to support you and all that you do.